Hey everyone, what's going on? In the past week or so, we've had a whole bunch of stories that involved the rapper who died back in June named XXXTentacion, or, however you pronounce his name. And if you followed my channel, I've talked about this guy extensively. I have a ton of videos, and what I talk about is how his death is coded by what is called gematria, or gematria. It is the ancient practice of coding numbers into words and phrases. And it's no different than the death of, countless other celebrities. Our mainstream media articles are always coded with the system. Our sports leagues are scripted this way. Our told history is all scripted with this system. And there's other ancient knowledge things that go along with it, such as Hermeticism and astrology. But if you just pay enough attention to what is going on in the media, you will start seeing a pattern of what is going on with these celebrity deaths and so on. Think about the band Slipknot. They have a song actually called Gematria, the Killing Name. Let's just type it out here really quick. Slipknot has a song, Gematria, the Killing Name, and their bass player, he died all by this codes after this album came out. His name was Paul Gray. And look at Paul Gray and Gematria equals 38. He died age 38. He died in Johnston. That equals 38. Even if you write out Johnston, Iowa, it equals 163, which is the 38th prime. The word gematria equals 38. And like I said, it comes from Kabbalah, that equals 38. In the band Slipknot, his name was even the Pig. That was his nickname. The Pig 38 is, his name equals 38. He died age 38. So, it's an absolute thing. And they're, think about Murder by Numbers, the song by the band called The Police. Murder by Numbers. 1, 2, 3, it's as easy as your ABCs. I'm not so sure that this guy was actually murdered. They really wanted it to sync up to Tupac, and that's why just after he died, his cousin drowned in the family pool in Jamaica, right? And Tupac was supposedly sipping daiquiris in Jamaica. Anyway, check out some links in the description. You can learn how to apply what I am talking about. It's just absolutely so simple. And like I said, it stems back to ancient knowledge things. Ancient knowledge, information that the average person isn't taught about. So the stories that we got were a story about his mom wanting the car that he got murdered in. They wanted to get that car back. And then we also got a story of his son being born. And then we also got a story of this rapper named Trippie Redd who avoided jail time because of this fight he got into in Atlanta. And keep in mind that this is just before the Super Bowl that is coming up. And the Super Bowl is being held in Atlanta. And what's interesting about this is that the Super Bowl is really synced up to the War of 1812, where Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem during the Battle of Baltimore. And think about the score of the opening game of the season this year. It was the Eagles versus the Falcons, and the score was even 18-12. And the reason it's important to this guy, Trippie Redd, and then the XXX guy, XXX died on this guy's birthday, which is June 18th, which was the day that the War of 1812 began. But look at the gematria here. So this guy's name is Trippie Redd. Trippie Redd equals 173 in gematria. And look what XXXTentacion equals. He equals 173 the frontwards way. And just after he died, Trippie Redd released the first posthumous song with XXX on it called Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters equals 173 in gematria. Also, XXX's cousin, who supposedly drowned in a pool in Jamaica, she drowned on the date of July 11th. Let's pull this up for you really quick. July 11th, which is the day that leaves 173 days in the year. And his new album was called Skins. Let's see if it comes up here. right here. His new album that came out after he died, it came out on December 7th of 2018, which just so happens to be, I mean, could you guess? Can you guess how many days away it is? It came out 173 days after the day that he died. What are the odds of all that? He was really synced up to the Stoneman Douglas shooting as well. He has an album called 17 that came out 173 days before the Stoneman Douglas shooting. And think about Stoneman Douglas. It was all about 17. 17 people killed, 17 people injured. You had 17-year-old David Hogg. You also had the Jaqueen Oliver kid, who was 17, who got buried on February 17th, which he got shot supposedly on February 14th, and they had a funeral and buried him already on the 17th. I mean, less than 3 days after he got buried, in a Dwayne Wade jersey, and Dwayne Wade born on the 17th day of the year. The XXX guy also had a song as a tribute to the Stoneman Douglas shooting after it happened. It was called Hope, and it was from that same area. A ton of other things. I covered this extensively. Even you had Anthony Rizzo of the Chicago Cubs, who supposedly went to high school at Stoneman Douglas, and just after the Stoneman Douglas shooting, we had the Cubs open up their season against Miami, right, the area where this Stoneman Douglas shooting happened. And on the second game, they did a tribute to the Stoneman Douglas victims, right, and that game went 17 innings, and they had 17 seconds of silence, and a 17-year-old victim throwing out the first pitch, and the game was scoreless until number 17, Chris Bryant, hit a home run. And then the game was won because Miguel Rojas hit a home run 1 month and 7 days after his birthday in the 17th inning. What are the odds of all that, They even had that boycott of the school for 17 minutes. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas also died 1 month and 7 days after her birthday, a lot like a 17. So that's why it was fitting that his album 17, and he's from that area, comes out 173 days before the Stoneman Douglas shooting. He also had an album, his mixtape before 17 was called Revenge, and it had a song called Valentine's on it. And he had another cousin who was murdered 1 month and 7 days after he released Revenge. And Revenge equals 40 in Gematria, and so does Valentine's. Also on his album 17, he has a song with Trippie Redd on it called Fuck Love. And think about that in regards to the Valentine's Day shooting, right? He has a song with Trippie Redd called Fuck Love. We had the Valentine's Day shooting. So a big deal with him and his connections to this guy, Trippie Redd. He was mad at Trippie Redd for being on the song called God's Plan with Drake. And if you recall, in videos on YouTube and whatnot, XXX talked about how Drake was trying to sacrifice him, remember? And the reason that it's so interesting, this story about Trippie Redd came out on January 28th. And the big beef that XXX had with Drake was that Drake supposedly stole his flow on a song called KMT. KMT here. And that day that the beef happened was on January 28th, right? 1/28. And then we get the story of Trippie Redd now on January 28th. And he was on God's Plan that equals 128 in Gematria. And XXX just so happened to die 128 days before Drake's birthday. And notice it's also 4 months and 6 days. He said Drake was going to sacrifice him. The word sacrifice equals 46 in Gematria. And then just after he died, Drake released his album called Scorpion that equals 46. And the word 17 in Gematria just so happens to equal 46. And look what KMT, the original beef with Drake that began, KMT equals 17. And Drake performed that song 17 days before Valentine's in the year 17. What are the odds? All of this, see how it all connects together? And what are the odds that he dies on Trippie Redd's 19th birthday? You know, and then he releases that song called Ghostbusters. And if you watched my videos, I talked about how Bill Murray was important. And Bill Murray, of course, in the movie Ghostbusters, but he's all about Chicago as well. And Chicago was where they had the original St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And that's why when Chester Bennington died, I talked about how Chester Bennington was in the band Linkin Park, and the St. Valentine's Day Massacre happened in Linkin Park, and there was something important to it. And then later that year, we got another St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So the other story that we got, and I'm going to explain a little bit more here in a second, but the other story that we got was the birth of his son. And his son, his mom gave his son the nickname Yume, or however you pronounce that. That just so happens to equal 17 in Gematria. And let's look it up here. His son's real name is this, Gekume Onfroy, that equals 180. The word son equals 180. And XXX's real name is Jasa Onfroy, that equals 180. So his son has the same name as him, and the word son equals 180. And in the article, they even highlight how the name, let me find it here. They highlight what the meaning of the name is. It means a different state or next. Universe of thought, whatever. But see how they highlight next and also a different state? When you write them out in Gematria, a different state equals 63. The word next equals 63. The letter X, look at the letter X. It equals 6 and also 3. That's why it's important. And also, if you write out his name, Jasa Onfroy, it also equals 63, you know? What are the odds? That's why they called it, his new album was called Skins as well. Skins, 63. Also with his son's name, look at it, 180, his name 180, son 180. If you add up Stoneman Douglas, it equals 180, you know? His death was all about the Stoneman Douglas shooting. This Trippie Redd story synced up to, you know, Drake, and Drake supposedly sacrificing him. That's why it came out on 128. He died on Trippie Redd's 19th birthday, and the 19th prime is 67. And with the V exception in Gematria, V is the 22nd letter, which is a master number, so it doesn't have to be broke down. So it can be 4 or also 22. And in that way, the word Valentine's equals 67, which is the 19th prime number. And the guy who shot up Stoneman Douglas supposedly was Nicholas Cruz. That equals 67 in Gematria. He was 19 years old, born exactly 19 weeks after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas died. The Stoneman Douglas shooting happened 6 months and 7 days after the Cubs player who went to school there, supposedly, Anthony Rizzo. It was 6 months and 7 days after his birthday, and 67 weeks after the Cubs won the World Series against the Cleveland Indians. Cleveland Indians equals 67 in Gematria. And once again, think about Chicago and the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and, you know, Chester Bennington had just died. Valentine's Day in the Eastern Orthodox is also on July 6th, which they write the date as 6/7, right? So what are the odds? He dies on Trippie Redd's 19th birthday, the 67th prime. Bill Murray is all about the number 67 too, you know. Bill Murray equals 67, I believe, in Gematria. Bill Murray equals 67. Also, William Murray, I believe, equals 67. And before I even knew Gematria, I knew there was something important to Bill Murray because he had tweeted on January 9th, 1/9, years before he was 67, he said, you know, I could wait 67 years before I do something or something. Like, can't remember what it was, but he said 67 years, and he wasn't even close to 67, and he did it on January 9th, 1/9, and there was a bunch of stuff. I can't remember it all, but off the top of my head, but like his I think his mom or dad died at the age of 67, or in the year 67 maybe. Can't remember it all, but it was all about 67. And then I learned gematria, and I learned that Bill Murray equals 67, and I thought, how perfect, you know? So also, like I said in the beginning of the video, Trippie Redd, avoided jail time for the fight being in Atlanta. And this is just before the Super Bowl that's going to be played in Atlanta. And there was a bunch of stuff I was talking about with drowning back when his cousin drowned. And then the 2 days later after I talked about it, we got the duck boat drowning. And I mentioned there was a father-son connection in the video, so maybe I'll find them and leave a link to that playlist so you can check it out, but it's just a lot of information to re-explain. But I know that there's something important to Atlanta, too, with Drake. Drake and Kanye West just had some beef or whatever back in December, and Drake is a male duck. A Drake is what a male duck is called. Kanye was born in Atlanta. That beef that Kanye and Drake had was 1 month and 20 days after Drake's birthday, and Kanye West just so happens to equal 120, and so does Drake, and so does Drake's real name, Aubrey Graham, 120. Atlanta equals 120, and if you remember, Atlanta had an Olympic bombing when they had the Olympics there, and that bombing supposedly happened at 1:20 in the morning. 1:20. Atlantis. Think about Atlanta, Atlantis. Atlantis equals 120. Illuminati equals 120. And, just think about all the music videos, everybody doing the one eye symbolism. Lady Gaga was the Super Bowl halftime performer when the Patriots came back and beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl. And she puts her 2 fingers over her eye because that represents the falcon god Ra, or Ra, who has the head of a falcon, right? And that's why in that song she says, Ra, Ra, la, 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 la. You know, it's just so stupid. And if you understand this knowledge, you will see why they do these things. We also just had that blood moon, the blood wolf moon, that was on January 20th, on the night that the Patriots beat the Chiefs, right? The red moon, and then the Chiefs playing the Sea of Red. And that happened on January 20th. The word eclipse equals 120. That was also Buzz Aldrin's birthday. And the reason that's interesting is if you check out the links in the description that I'm going to leave, the Stoneman Douglas shooting was really important to the moon. Just after or just before the Stoneman Douglas shooting, we got the Falcon Heavy launch, right? The Falcon Heavy launch, and it was the 49th launch of Falcon missiles, and it was in the 49th, just before the 49th anniversary of the moon landing that Chester Bennington died on, right? The anniversary of the moon landing, just before the Great American Eclipse. And it was all about David Bowie. They did the whole David Bowie thing. There was all kinds of 49 stuff, like Falcon Heavy equaled 49 just before it was the 49th launch of Falcon rockets. It was just before the 49th anniversary of the 49th anniversary of the moon landing. There's a bunch of other things, like David Bowie equaled 49, and Space Oddity equaled 49, and he released Space Oddity right before the moon, or right before we supposedly landed on the moon in 1969. And the reason that was important is because in Jewish gematria, let me pull up Jewish here, and keep in mind this goes back to Jewish mysticism, which is called Kabbalah, where that has a belief that God created the world by merging the letter with the number. But within this, if you wrote out Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, it equaled 1969, like the year of the moon landing. And, it was in the year 69 during the time of Cancer. And if you look up the symbol for Cancer, it looks like a lot like a 69. So I guess, moral of the story, I just wanted to point out that it's important to this 120 is important to that moon that happened on January 20th. And it's synced up to all these things in Atlanta and the Atlanta Olympic bombing that happened at 1:20 in the morning. Even, let's look at the Atlanta bombing really quick here. Was it Alice Pack? We'll find it with Alice Pack. The Atlanta Olympic bombing happened on July 27th of 1996. And what's so funny about it is that there was only 2 people who died, and the lady who died, her name was Alice Hawthorne, and then another guy died because he had a heart attack on the way to the hospital or whatever. And the bomb was actually called an Alice Pack, and then the only person who died was named Alice Hawthorne. Like, what are the odds? Alice is the only person who dies from the Alice Pack at the Olympic bombing, and the other guy dies because of a heart attack on the way to the hospital or whatever. And the bombings happened when the band Jack, Mack, and the Heart Attacks were playing. You know? You don't even need numbers to see how ridiculous that is, right? It was an Alice Pack, and a lady named Alice dies, and the other guy who dies he had a heart attack while, Jack Mack or whatever it is, Jack Mack and the Heart Attacks were playing. You don't even need numbers to understand that knowledge, to understand how ridiculous that is. And so the Olympics are important too. We got the Super Bowl coming up tomorrow or today now, and we have the Rams in there. And the Rams, the last time they won in the Super Bowl was in Atlanta, and they beat the Titans. And in mythology, the Olympians, they overthrew the Titans, right? Zeus basically, he castrated his father Cronus, so who was a Titan and whatnot. So there's something interesting going on with the narrative here. And we just got the death of this guy named Wood Harris, who was famous for being in the movie Remember the Titans. I'll just type it out really quick. Remember the Titans. We'll find Wood Harris. He just died here. Actually, I wrote it in my blog wrong, though. But this guy didn't actually die. It's the guy that he portrayed in the movie Remember the Titans that died. Julius Campbell. But it's still interesting. So this guy portrayed the guy who died in real life. And he's, famous for the movie Remember the Titans. But it also talks about how he was in this TV show called The Wire. And when you read down farther, it talks about how he reunited with the Wire cast member Michael B. Jordan for Creed, the latest installment of Rocky, right? So this guy was also in the film Creed, and he was Tony Evers. I didn't even notice that before either. Now I need to look into it. Because that guy died. The guy who portrayed that guy died too. But anyway, there's this big narrative I have been talking about with Michael B. Jordan and Creed, and how it's all synced up to Philadelphia and Hulk Hogan getting his revenge on Earthquake at the Spectrum Center in Philadelphia, and the building that falls over in the movie Happy Gilmore, it looks like the Comcast Center in Philadelphia, and it falls over when he learns how to putt on the Earthquake golf course. But anyway, when you think about Michael B. Jordan, he portrays the guy named Adonis Creed in the film Creed. And think about Drake, and Drake, his child, was a big deal. And his child's name is also Adonis. So we have Adonis Creed, Adonis. We just recently had a story about this boxer who's able to walk again after getting knocked out. And his name was Adonis Stevenson. And I made some videos. If you followed what I'm saying, there's something to do with water that's going on too. Watch the water. It's something I've been talking about a lot since Super Bowl 48, but the reason that it's important is because this Adonis Stevenson guy got knocked out by the Ukrainian guy, the Ukraine boxer, and the coat of arms for Ukraine is the trident. And just think about that in regards to the ocean. Think about that in regards to water. And the god of water is Neptune, or also it is Poseidon, depending on what you're looking at. And the reason that's interesting is because he's also the god of earthquakes and horses. So god of horses, earthquakes, and also of the sea. And something I've been talking about for years is that Michael Jordan is important to Philadelphia. And think about Kobe Bryant, who's from Philadelphia, or the Philadelphia area and whatnot. But the original capital of the country, Jordan, was Philadelphia until it was later destroyed by earthquakes. So there's something important there. And Adonis in mythology is the lover of Aphrodite, the goddess of love. And think about Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. I've talked about how Roddy Piper was important to that Hulk Hogan narrative with Ronda Rousey. And he supposedly saw the ghost of Adrian Adonis. Think about Rocky's wife being named Adrian, right? And then Adonis Creed. Adrian, he's played by Michael B. Jordan, right? There's something important to there. And we also recently got the death of Chris Brown in Paris. And that's important to Kanye, or Kanye is important to Paris for a number of reasons. He even had the clothing line that looked like ISIS, and, think about Kim Kardashian being robbed in Paris, and a ton of other things with Kanye in Paris. He even has a song, The N-Word in Paris, with Jay-Z, right? But think about Chris Brown. So he's just recently arrested in Paris, and Drake's son actually is with some lady from Paris, and Chris Brown and Drake had a feud over Rihanna way back when, and one of the people that in the bar fight they got into, one of the people that got hurt was Tony Parker, the San Antonio Spurs player, who is the French basketball player. And Tony Parker doesn't play for the Spurs anymore. He plays for the Charlotte Hornets, who's Michael Jordan's team, right? The team that Michael Jordan owns. Rihanna is important because in Super Bowl 48, it was all about water. And she's from Barbados, and it has the trident on the flag. And just a ton of stuff with her. She has a song with the I don't know what it's called, Diamonds in the Sky or something. And supposedly it rains diamonds on the planet Neptune. Neptune is the god of the sea, right? And if you watch that video, it's all about bringing this horse back to life, because the whole thing is all about Neptune, right? Or Poseidon. So all of these things are just, they're interrelated. There's a theme that's going along with this XXX thing that's synced up to Drake. There's something important to Paris with it. And, think about the French language supposedly being the language of love, and Pepe Le Pew, right? And France this year, in 2019, it's important because we have the 227th anniversary of the fall of the French monarchy that's coming up on August 10th, which is also the beginning of the Jewish holy day called Tisha B'Av, where it's all about the destruction of the two temples, right? And Tisha B'Av equals 9/11 in Jewish gematria. Think about the destruction of the two towers on 9/11 in the United States. And now we have the Rams playing the Patriots of the Super Bowl, and the last time they played each other at the Super Bowl was just after 9/11. Also think about France in regards to the Bavarian Illuminati, right? And think about this 120 up here. Illuminati equals 120. France has been really important to what is going on. I don't know what the full point of it all is, but that's why they have the yellow jackets and a bunch of other things. And, this 227th anniversary of the fall of the French monarchy is important because if you write out French monarchy in gematria, it equals 227. If you write out French Revolution, it equals 227. Napoleon was born on the 227th day of the year. Also, the Napoleon died on May 5th, which was when the French Revolution began, right? And then Napoleon died on that day, and it began when the Estates General that equals 227 met. And now we're coming up on the 227th anniversary of the fall of the French monarchy. It's really important. We had that van crash in Nice, France on Bastille Day in 2016, and it was the 227th anniversary of the storming of the Bastille. So I'm just thinking, think about XXX's name, right? XXXTentacion, right? Just sounds kind of French to me. I don't know if that's what it comes from for sure, but it just sounds like it is something that is French. And France in Gematria equals 34, which it's important. The Super Bowl this year is on 3/4, and the Rams haven't won the Super Bowl since Super Bowl 34. It's synced up to the Ravens in the War of 1812 because the Battle of Baltimore happened in, obviously, Baltimore, but that's where Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem. And, Super Bowl 47, when the Ravens beat the 49ers, it was all about the number 34, right? They won with 34 points. There was the 34-minute blackout. Joe Flacco equals 34. When the blackout happened, the total score was 34 points. They won with 34 points. So I just made a video in regards to a lot of the 34. That's why the government shutdown that lasted for 34 days, and shutdown equals 34. And that's why LeBron James got injured on the Lakers' 34th game just before his 34th birthday, and then he just sat out against the Warriors, who he got hurt against 34 days after his birthday. What's interesting is all of this coding to the War of 1812, right? The War of 1812 began on the day that XXXTentacion died, right? And it's important to the Napoleonic Wars, right? So just think about how all this connects to France, right? It's kind of a spin-off or whatever, a minor theater of the Napoleonic Wars, or however you say that. And what's interesting is, for some reason, I knew this, but I just didn't put it together. Earlier in a previous video, I just talked about how there's this thing with Michael Jordan and why Bow Wow was in the news today. The same day we got that blackface story. It was synced up to Don Lemon, and I talked about this date of 2/17, which is Michael Jordan's birthday. And then I said New England Patriots equal 217, Tom Brady, and also Michael Jordan are the GOATs, right? But look at this. The War of 1812, it came to an end on February 17th, Michael Jordan's birthday. The 48th day of the year that syncs up to the wall. Wall equals 48. Donald Trump equals 48. Mexican-American War ended 48. So, man, the War of 1812 was a lot more important than I even realized. So, this date, I'm telling you, I don't know, it's just something really important. The NBA All-Star Week this week is going to be important in regards to the symbolism that is going on. But it's a lot to do with France, so there's more to learn, I guess. I don't fully have it figured out yet. I just discovered a few things here, so I'm going to leave the video here, but just know that if you learn this system, you can see what is going on within our mainstream media. You can see how our told history is all scripted by this system. These people supposedly die by this system. We get these stories by this system. Our sports leagues are rigged up to this system. So, need to do some more research now in regards to France. So, just something just sparked my brain. So, have a good one. Peace.